Okay, well, it looks like the numbers have kind of slowed down here, so that's great. Good morning, everybody. My name is Patrick Sullivan, and I'm the President and CEO of the Halifax Chamber of Commerce. Thank you for joining us here today on for an overview of what's happening, navigating with in our seminar series, navigating with COVID-19. We'll be having a discussion today about reopening and what we need to do to reopen and what some of the programs are that are still available. So would encourage you to answer, or sorry, ask, I'll answer, ask any questions that you may have using the Q&A function. So take a look at the Q&A function. You'll find that along the bottom of your screen. You can also use the chat function if you wish to communicate. If you are using the chat function, I would encourage you to address your note to all panelists and attendees. That way, any attendees who may be interested in your question or comment could see what you're saying as I reply. I'm curious if anybody would like to put down kind of what industry you may be in. So if you want to stick that in the chat function and just let me know if you're from a restaurant or a not-for-profit or an office environment. If you have any specific sort of questions or comments about reopening, please let me know. I'm kind of staring at my big monitor here, which is why I'm a little off center instead of looking at the smaller screen on my 11-inch laptop. So I apologize for if I'm not looking directly at you, but it gives me a chance to kind of look at the big screen as I'm talking to everyone. So I think what I'll do now is share my screen and jump into this. So there we go. Just going to so. Again, my name is Pat Sullivan, and we're going to talk a little bit about what to know for reopening. I do have some recent news, I suppose, and that is that the Premier and Dr. Strang announced on Friday the new gathering limit of 10, although physical distancing is still required. And that's really, really important, the physical distancing. It's basically required everywhere. So everywhere you go, this physical distancing of 2 meters or 6 feet is still required. There is now a first 15-person limit exception for outdoor weddings and funerals. So again, that's outdoor and for those two instances. And effective June 5th, most businesses required to close under the public health order can reopen. That includes restaurants for dine-in, bars, wineries, distilleries, personal services, and fitness facilities such as gyms, yoga studios, and climbing facilities. So it is important to recognize that those businesses can reopen if they have had an approved plan or a plan approved by public health or by Dr. Strang, okay? Important to mention that. Businesses that were not ordered to close, and I'll use the Chamber of Commerce as an example. We're an office environment. We were not ordered to close, although we were ordered not to do any more events, large-scale events. But we were not ordered to close, but we chose to step away from our office and take the team and have the team move to our homes and work from home. We've now returned to the office, and I'll talk more about that as I go along. We're back on Monday. A number of us were back on Monday. We're not really in a rush to reopen or a rush to get everyone back in the office. And I'll talk more about that in a few moments. This limit of gathering of 10, it's important to also mention that that gathering limit, it applies to interiors in some of the specific instances we're kind of talking about. It's social gatherings, business gatherings. So again, I'll use the Chamber of Commerce as an example. If we were to return to the office with all of our 15 staff, that is allowed, right? We can do that because it's not a social gathering, it's work. So we're returning to work. We still need to maintain the 6 feet of physical distancing as we return. But if you were a large office space of 40 or 50,000 square feet downtown, and you have 50 employees, you are allowed to return to work. The gathering limit does not apply because work is not a social activity. But you need to maintain that 6 feet of physical distancing. Okay, there's a lot of confusion about that. So just to be very clear, there's no rule. The gathering limit does not apply to a business. Okay. And again, I'm happy to take questions. This can be really, really confusing. It's a little easier to understand, I think, now that we're at 10. Ultimately, I think we'll probably get to 50 as we get through the summer, if we continue to keep the cases of COVID under control. Okay, so that's the recent announcements. And again, tomorrow, which is June 5th, those businesses can reopen. There are a number of plans already approved by public health. I'll touch on those as we get through the through this presentation and actually show you those plans. But I'll show you what we're using as a plan along the way as well. Just to talk about some of the programs that are still available, the Canadian Emergency Commercial Rent Assistance Program, or CECRA, provides relief for small businesses experiencing financial hardship. So the program basically will encourage a landlord, and it has to be applied for by the landlord. The landlord can apply if the business has suffered a greater than 70% reduction in revenue. It's a pretty big number. If that has occurred, the federal and provincial governments will cover 50% of the rent, the tenant covers 25% of the rent, and the property owner forgiving or foregoing at least 25% of the rent. So basically the landlord says, I'm not going to take 25%, the tenant pays 25%, and the federal and provincial government will pay 50%. Only 16,000 companies took that up in the last, since it was opened, which is a couple of weeks ago. Applications are still available till August 31st. If you're a landlord, this does provide benefit for you, and the benefit is, although you are forgiving the 25%, you are likely to maintain your tenant. So it is probably more difficult to find a tenant to occupy space if you were to evict, or if your tenant was to fail. And for your tenant to get that 50% provision from the federal and provincial government will help that tenant to reopen their business as they come back to work. Okay, so that's CECRA. The wage subsidy, if you are a Canadian employer, you may be eligible for up to a subsidy of 75% of wages for up to 24 weeks, retroactive to March 15th, and now until August 29th. So that was recently extended. We actually did a webinar a week or so ago with Sean Fraser, who is the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Finance. And Sean was asking what the business feedback was about the next iteration of the wage subsidy. So many businesses are taking advantage of the wage subsidy. You do need to have, it was up to 15% reduction in revenue in the first month. After that, it was roughly a 30% reduction in revenue. If you've had that 30% reduction in revenue, you are eligible for that 75% of employee wages. The encouragement that the federal government would give you is that they will give you up to 75% of those wages to an employee who is paid around $58,000. But they are hoping that you will pay, as the employer, that remaining 25%. It's not an obligation. So I have spoken to a number of businesses who said, look, we've got almost no revenue. We can't do that. But we've spoken to our employees, and we feel it's better to give them this amount of money, which works out to slightly more than the CERB, and that way they're still employed by us. So you don't have to pay the remaining 25%. In conversation with your employees, if it's a better deal, then you should still try to apply for that. So it does enable you to rehire workers. Or I was speaking to someone yesterday who should likely be hiring employees. So he has contractors now. He's not eligible for the wage subsidy. If those were full-time employees, he could hire them, and he could take advantage of the wage subsidy. So this is a really, really important program. I can tell you that, sadly, at the Chamber of Commerce, we have had a reduction of greater than 30% of our revenue, because much of our revenue comes from events. So we have applied for the wage subsidy and been successful in receiving that wage subsidy. And we're really pleased, because it's keeping all of our employees paid. during the pandemic. The recent announcement by the provincial government is the Small Business Reopening and Support Grant. So that grant is available for businesses who've been impacted by COVID-19. If you had received the previous Small Business Impact Grant, then you are automatically enabled for this. So you should have received, if you received that Small Business Impact Grant a couple of months ago, a month and a half ago, of up to $5,000, you will be receiving an email. You should have already received an email. So if you've not received an email, because they went out on Monday and Tuesday, you should check your junk mail. I've had people mention that they've found those emails in their junk mail. So in their junk mail or in your spam or wherever it happens to be, look for an email from the province of Nova Scotia saying that you have qualified again. That's, and if you receive the Small Business Impact Grant, you are automatically qualified. You simply need to acknowledge when it opens, which is not until next week, that you wish to receive it again. You don't have to submit any additional paperwork, and you will receive an amount. I can't say how much that would be, but it's up to $5,000 to help your business safely reopen. And we'll talk about some of the ways that you could spend that money. You'll also receive a business continuity voucher of up to $1,500 for advice and services to help your business adapt to and become more resilient for the COVID-19 world. So that may be for PPE, that may be for dividers in your office or in your restaurant. So, you know, it's, you know, you can use it for many, many things. If you did not receive the Small Business Impact Grant, you can apply for this, or at least the plan is to apply on June 8th. So it's supposed to open on June 8th. It was originally supposed to open on June 1st, and it didn't. And we only found that out late in the day on June 1st, but our expectation is that it will open to additional applicants on June 8th. It's important for anyone who's going to apply to that. I would suggest to apply early. Don't wait. There is a limited amount of money of about $20 million. It sounds like a lot of money, but there are 3,000 people who received the original Small Business Impact Grant. So much of that money will go out like that. So if you are a new applicant, then I would encourage you to get your application in early. Okay, so if you could do that. So keep that in mind. Take a look for that. I don't know. I'll look towards the end of this, and I'll find the page that's available. In fact, maybe Sandra, who I think is listening in, can find the application page and post it to the chat function, so everyone can see the link to that page. And Sandra, if you can't find it, I know Becky or Abby can find that for you. Okay, so that's a little bit about the Small Business Impact Grant, a reopening and support grant, which is from the province of Nova Scotia, and will be available next week. If you already qualified for the Small Business Impact Grant, you should have received an email. Okay, so keep an eye out for that. There is another program right now. So for businesses that were not eligible for the CEBA or the Canadian Emergency Business Account, that was the $40,000 amount that you could get from your financial institution. So you could get that from, you know, if you were with RBC or if you're with TD or Scotiabank, they basically had a location where you could apply for that $40,000. In many cases, it was delivered as a line of credit. So you didn't actually get cash, you received it as a line of credit, and you needed to draw down that line of credit to actually get that $40,000. But with that came a $10,000 forgivable portion. So I would, again, this is much like that. It's for people who were unable to get the CEBA. So if you did not qualify for the CEBA, and to qualify for the CEBA, you had to have salaries in your business of over $20,000 up to $1.5 million. So this, you don't have a requirement for salaries. So I don't know that a lot of people know about this yet. This is really, really important and a big opportunity for businesses who did not qualify for the CEBA. So if you did not qualify for the CEBA or the Canadian Emergency Business Account, this is the account for you if you're in Halifax. I should say that. If you're in other areas of Nova Scotia, I'll touch on that in a second. But it has a maximum loan of $40,000. It has 0% interest until December 31st, 2022, which is a great deal. And you can get up to 25% or $10,000 in loan forgiveness. Okay, so really important if you didn't qualify for the CEBA to apply for this. This is also a limited amount of money. Okay, so CEBA was an unlimited amount of money. The federal government just said apply. This is a limited amount of money. It's budgeted through SEED and ultimately through ACOA, the Atlantic Canada Opportunities Agency. So you need to apply for this. Again, the earlier you do it, the greater your likelihood of receiving. Okay, so would really encourage people who did not qualify for other initiatives to look at this opportunity. Okay, sorry, I'm just going to look quickly here. There we go. Okay, sorry, moving things around. Just going to the questions. Let's see. Yeah, so Suzanne mentioned Gravette consulting, coaching business. So lots of opportunities to speak to people online, to receive, utilize that $1,500 in subsidy for the previous program, the provincial program. I did mention for businesses outside of Halifax. Outside of Halifax, SEED is doing Halifax or Greater Halifax area. Outside of Halifax, you would apply to your local CBDC. So I know just in Dartmouth and along the Eastern Shore, there's Blue Water CBDC. You should speak to them about this program. So this program is available. It may be a slightly different name, but it's basically the CEBA-like program. So I would encourage you to take a look at that. Oh, sorry. Okay. Now, how do we reopen a business? So we developed this particular paper. You can see our 5 ways to reopen. I'm going to do a slightly longer version than this that we also have available on our website. I'm just going to click through to that. I hope it'll click through. Yeah. So here's our 5 ways to reopen. This is sorry, that's downloadable and printable. Then I'm going to go through this document, which is slightly longer, which talks a lot more about how to open your business. Okay, but all of these documents are available on our chamber website. Sorry, I probably should have clicked on that again and provided you with a URL. But I'll get Sandra again to provide the URL in the chat function for these reopening kits, so that you can access them easily. Okay. We've really tried to keep our members up to date on available resources and funding. You know, as recently as the other day, we sent an email to 12,000 people. It's really important to take a look at those emails. You know, in the email the other day, we mentioned a new program available through the Canadian Chamber of Commerce, which is a $10,000 grant to open your business. There'll be 62 of those grants available across the country, and you can apply and get up to $10,000. In fact, there were a couple of local businesses here, the Old Triangle, and gosh, what's Susan's business? Grape Escapes, right? Grape Escapes wine tours, who both did a video for the national launch of that program. But take a look. There's an opportunity for a $10,000 grant. You can apply. There were other information. You know, we provided the links directly to the provincial programs, but we've really been hammering away how to reopen your business. So this is kind of at Dr. Strang's urging for the last month or so. Everyone needs to have a plan. You don't need to have an approved plan unless you were a business ordered closed. Okay, so I want to say it one more time because I can't say it enough. If you were ordered closed meaning you were a barber, you were a spa, you were a restaurant with in-room dining, you were a physiotherapist, you were a dentist, all of those businesses were ordered closed. If you were a Scotiabank branch, or if you were a local not-for-profit, it was likely that you were not ordered closed. I can think of some specific not-for-profits, but generally you were not ordered closed. The Halifax Chamber of Commerce was not ordered closed. So we do not, and none of the groups that I just mentioned, the Scotiabanks and the most not-for-profits, the great majority of not-for-profits, I'm looking at a tire store next to me, Dartmouth Surplus across from our office. None of those were ordered closed. They can be open today, but you need to have a plan to protect both your employees and your customers. And remember, in Nova Scotia legislation, it is your obligation as the employer to protect both your employees and your customers. Okay, it's not the government's obligation, it's your obligation. So you need to make sure they're safe. Okay, how can you do that? You need to have a, where am I going now? You need to have a plan. You need to have a plan. So this was an example of our quick plan. We then subsequently expanded it to a much longer plan. So I'll kind of go through this. So in our case, we established a task force. Now, again, I've had people say to me, well, task force, we don't need a task force. You need a few people, 2 or 3 people is better than one person making a plan, because they're inevitably, the group is going to think a little bit more about some of the things you may miss as one person. So make it up of 2 to 5 staff. You don't need to have, a consultant to help you with this. Certainly there are consultants that can help you. And, if that's the way you'd like to go, I would encourage you to do that. But you can do much of this on your own. To get specific help is maybe important if you have a complex environment. So, I think of one of our not-for-profits, Easter Seals, who have staff, but they also have members who come in and work on projects during the day. Some of those folks are disabled. They may need some additional help in developing a plan, because it's a more complex environment. Daycares, I ultimately believe there will be a daycare plan available from the province, but there's some complexity in what you need to do. So think about that with a group, develop that prevention plan, ensure best practices are followed by staff and customers for overall safety. We moved back to our office on Monday. We're still looking to get signage for our office, but we plan to have one direction way through the office. We don't want people to wander back and forth through the office, up and down the aisles of the cubicles and breathing over their fellow staff members. We'd rather have everybody go in one direction, okay? So that's one way to ensure the best practice. Keep yourself updated on changing guidelines and policies. So last Friday, immediately it went from 5 people to 10 people. So if you are a business owner, if you're a retail store, you should think about the increasing number of peoples. Now, I sort of caught myself when I say that, because this is where the confusion starts. Because even as I'm saying that, I know that a business doesn't have a limitation on the number of people. Okay, so if you're a retail store, you don't actually have a limitation on the number of people that can enter your store. But those people need to ensure that they're separated by 6 feet of distance, okay? So if you have a smaller retail store and you can only put 3 people in the store, adequately distanced, at 6 feet, then maybe you can only put 3. If you've got a larger store, you could put 10. If you're a local large furniture store, then you could put 30. Again, if they can sort of adjust to the 6 feet of distance, okay? So if you have over 20 employees, the rules in Nova Scotia from occupational health and safety or labor and advanced education say you should have an occupational health and safety team inside the office. If you do, then that would be a great group to participate in this program. Signage, I mentioned signage. We're going to have a unidirectional signage to ensure people are going in one direction. We want to make sure that people are washing their hands often, that they're maintaining physical distancing. We have a coffee station in our office. We have yet to put down the spatial markings, but there's only 4 of us back in the office at this time. But we need to have markings. We're going to put markings on the floor to ensure that people are not crowding each other as we're getting coffee. Okay, so much like, if you were to line up at Kent Lumber outside, they've got that 6-foot distance outside so that you can line up and go in. You might want to have 6 feet markers at your coffee station so people can line up to get coffee. Screening tools like infrared cameras, again, these are optional. to keep in mind. You don't have to do these things. I went to the Apple store yesterday. I needed to get a new power cord for my computer because it broke, and they took my temperature as I walked into the Apple store. I also had a mask on as I walked into the Apple store, as did all employees. Um, my wife said to me last night, she said, well, what would have happened if you didn't have a mask? And I said, well, I suppose they didn't have to let me in. It is their store. They don't have to let you in. But and Apple doesn't have windows. But if you have a retail store, you can put a sign on your window that says people with masks only will be admitted. Now, I'd encourage you to get some disposable masks if people don't have masks. You don't want to turn people away so that they can grab a mask, put it on, and then take it away with them. Obviously, you don't want it back. Ensure that your workplace has personal protective equipment. So that includes masks. We ordered 25 masks. We will that are. Here's my mask right here. So I'll just show you how. Well, I don't want to put it on, but anyway, something like that. We ordered 25 of those for the staff. So those are cloth and more permanent. Although, as I listened to Dr. Strang, he would say, wear it today, wash it tonight, wear another one tomorrow. So you do need to have 2 or 3 of these permanent masks. Sorry, you can't really see it, can you? 2 or 3 of these permanent masks. And then we also have disposable masks. We're still having trouble getting Purell or disinfectant for our hands, but we bought lots of soap, and we put soap at all of the sinks in the office. We did have a deep cleaning done of our workplace last week. So on Thursday, before we returned to the office, our cleaners came in and did a deep clean of the workplace. Our cleaners come in every day. We're lucky enough to have that as a part of an office environment. They're now coming in at the end of the day. They're also coming in midway through the day, so around lunchtime, and they're cleaning with Lysol wipes all high-touch surfaces. So washroom doors, handles, coffee machine area, copier, all of those kinds of areas will be wiped with Lysol wipes and disinfected frequently. So it's important to get that material. We do have a list on our website of materials and where people can get those materials. Self-assessment form for employees to take before every shift. As I say, you could have, as I went to the Apple store, they had a security guard. He asked me if I had been out of the province in the previous 14 days. He asked me if I had a temperature. He asked me if I was ill. I don't know that everyone is going to do this in every organization, but certainly your employees should understand that they should not come to work if they're ill. They should not come to work if they frankly are feeling like they've got a cold or any of the other symptoms that public health has identified. Where can you find those symptoms? They're listed if you sign up perhaps for the list of symptoms from the province. You can find that list and take a look at it. Again, I'll ask Sandra to post a link. I suspect that it's on the government's COVID-19, Nova Scotia government COVID-19 page. It's got the list of symptoms. Again, your employees should understand what those symptoms are. And if they have those, don't come to work. And notify your workplace that you're not coming and that you have those symptoms. Restrict the capacity of areas to limit the number of people able to congregate. Again, this is a little tricky. If you're coming to the office, it's up to you to ensure that you are separated by 6 feet of distance. If you're a landlord and you have a gym in your building, in your apartment building, then the obligation would be on you to ensure that there are only a certain number of people. So maybe they need to make a reservation to go in. Maybe you should limit that to 2 or 3 people in the gym if you're a landlord at a time. So things to think about. And then communicate this plan to from the task force and team to all staff. Employees, prepare for employees. Employers should issue a training checklist. We kind of talked about that a moment ago. If they're exhibiting COVID symptoms, stay home and follow the quarantine guidelines. It is easier to get a test today than it has been in the past. So I would encourage you to, if you're feeling ill, to call 811 and attempt to get that test. PPE for employees. Again, as an employer, you need to provide these materials. They are available. Don't go to Amazon to order them. Amazon's lovely, I'm sure, but there are local suppliers. We do have a list on our website, PPE on the page I'm going to show you in a few moments. A company that I don't think is on that, but I received yesterday was EMCO, EMCO. And although it doesn't look like they have PPE on their webpage, if you go there, they do have PPE, and you should contact them because I know they've got availabilities right this minute. Avoid touching, eyes, nose, and mouth. No shaking hands. No sharing equipment or tools. Even things like knives and forks and cups. We provided everyone with their own knives and forks, their own cups, and they have it on their desk. The knives and forks are in a plastic bag, and we encourage everyone to wash their own materials and not to put those back in the dishwasher at the end of the day. Just keep your own materials for a week. Maybe we'll wash it at the end of the week. Communicate weekly, and then regularly check in on the mental health of employees. This is a huge change to the way we used to live, and it's not going away. So we really need to ensure that people are feeling okay, that they're feeling okay about what's happening at their workplace, that they're feeling okay about working from home if they've had the opportunity to do that. Parents are significantly impacted, given that they may have smaller children or even adult children at home. So, living with people for an extended period of time and not being able to go out very far has been very difficult for very, very many people. So we need to understand that as employers, and we need to be flexible, especially with parents as we're coming into this reopening phase. Luckily, I don't think any employers are rushing employees to get back to work tomorrow. I don't know of any restaurants, for instance, or service establishments that are saying everybody has to be back because they simply don't think they'll have the business. So, if I were an employer, a restaurateur, I would say, if you don't have children at home, would you like to be the first to come back to the office? And then let's bring the folks with children at home back to, sorry, I said office, but back to the workplace at a later time, if that's possible. Okay. Prepare your customers. You need to tell people what's going on. I've been on so many websites where there's just zero information about what's happening with our businesses right now. You need to tell people what's happening with your business. You need to tell them whether you're open or closed. You need to tell them what the expectations will be of customers as they come back. So just add a highlight. Hopefully you have a web developer that can easily put a highlight on the homepage that says more information about COVID-19, and it goes to a separate page. You may not want to mess up your homepage. Goes to a separate page, and it says, here's information on during COVID-19. Our expectation is that you will wear a mask as you come into the store, or our expectation is that you will remain physically distant, which is very, very important. Put a sign up on your door. You need to remain physically distant. If you expect people to wear a mask, put that up on the door. If you have hand sanitizer, and I would encourage you to try and find some, put it at the front of the store so that people can pump and use that hand sanitizer before they touch anything in your store. There's a lot of concern about retailers and people coming in and touching materials, and you're right to be concerned. So if you're concerned, put up the signage that says don't touch your face when you're in my store. Stay 6 feet apart. Use hand sanitizer when you come in. Consider limiting store capacity. Open non-essential doors. If you have 2 doors, have people come in one door and go out another door. I went to a Thai restaurant the other night. Normally they have the back door locked, or closed at the very least. Now you come in one way, you pick up your Thai food, and you walk out the other way. Arrow-shaped tape to direct people and keep 6 feet apart from your customers. In our office, our landlord has said that they would prefer not to put things on the floor because it would just be hard to clean and they'll get dirty. So they plan to put them on the wall. I think if they're visible, that's the most important thing. Update your website to reflect the new rules, and mentioned that already. And then reach out to us to aid with communicating the changes and readiness for customers. We want to help our members. So if you tweet and tag us about your changes or your reopening. We want to get that information out. We have over 13,000 followers on Twitter. Let us know. Tweet, tag us, we'll repost, and we'll get the information out about your store and whether you're able to reopen. You don't need to reopen. I should emphasize this. It's not urgent that people reopen tomorrow. You know, I don't think that people are going to be significantly left behind if they wait another week or another 2 weeks to open their business. I know people want to open, but we need to ensure that we open properly and safely so that we're not in another situation with a resurgence of COVID-19. And finally, prepare for transactions. Certainly, everyone has been utilizing, contactless payment, but even sales registers should be 6 feet apart. As I go to my local grocery store, they do have machines where you can check yourself out, but they've got 3 in a row. They've closed the one in the middle. They've certainly got plexiglass up. If you need to get plexiglass, take a look at that. I know there are a number of sign manufacturers in Halifax and Dartmouth who are manufacturing that now and have that available now. So take a look at the plexiglass that we've all learned to see over the last number of weeks and months. Provide hand sanitizer and disinfectant wipes. If someone does use a point of sale machine, then have your Lysol wipes there and wipe down that machine immediately after the transaction if they've touched that POS machine, okay? If cash is the only option, wash your hands immediately after placing cash in the register. If you're unable to wash your hands, then use the Purells of the world. Install screens, disinfect transaction areas after each transaction. Point of sale equipment, kind of talked about that, and consider home delivery, takeout, drive-through, curbside pickup options where applicable. And I know a number of restaurants, I know lots of restaurants have been doing that already. Again, I don't know that there will be a rush to move away from that. I would encourage them to continue to do that. They're not going to be able to accept all of the customers that they used to have in their establishment. So I would encourage them to continue those, and I'd encourage all of us to continue to participate. So if you're still uncomfortable going to a restaurant, or frankly are unable to get in because there may not be enough seating, I would encourage you to still utilize the home delivery takeout. I would encourage you to take advantage or to go to that restaurant to do the pickup rather than using some of the delivery apps. And that's nothing against delivery apps. If that's all you've got, great. But remember, you're going to deliver more money to the restaurant if you actually pick up yourself as you move along. And then post a sign for deliveries outlining expectations. Do you expect people to have PPE on if they're going to take it from your hand, or do you just plan to put it down in front of people's doors? So that's a really quick overview of the things that you need to do to support that reopening plan. I haven't seen any questions yet, but if people have questions, I'm anxious to hear them because that's a plan. Right? I mean, that's an example of a plan. It's what you need to do. Now, you can be much more specific and say, I'm going to clean this once a day or twice a day. I'm going to be very specific about the one-way unidirectional signage in my office or in my store. I'm going to be, you need to have more specifics that fit your particular instance. But that's basically a plan. So we've had a lot of emails from people saying, where do I get a plan? How do I develop a plan? What does a plan look like? Does Dr. Strang need to approve my plan? When the reality is they're an office environment. They were never ordered closed. Dr. Strang and the folks at Occupational Health and Safety as part of Labor and Advanced Education are approving plans for large groups. So they're really trying to do fewer plans for larger groups. So let's look at some of the plans that are available now. I can find them. Here we go. So we go to the plans that are available now. Oh gosh, I feel like I'm not in the right place. Keeping workplaces safe, keeping customers safe. Yeah, I don't think I'm in the right place there, Sandra. So, um, where is that link? There is a link to plans that are available. And I had it yesterday, workplace prevention plan for their sector. There we go. Developing a here we go. Now we're talking sector specific plan. There we go. Okay. So yesterday there were four. Now we've got, goodness knows what that is, 3, 6, 9, 10, or 11. So here's plans that are specific for individual organizations. Let's look at the body art sector, because I think it's shorter than some of the other plans. I think we all understand what body art is. It's tattoos generally. There are other forms of body art, I'm sure. They are saying things like, let's see, these guidelines are required as a body artist cannot establish a physical distance of at least 2 meters from their patient. High-risk services, including close face-to-face contact under a mask, would not be allowed. Those include nostril, septum, lip, and tongue piercings, any tattooing which require the client's mask removal. So you still can't do those things. So this is still not a broad reopening. And what are they going to do? Staff safety. Staff will review existing disinfection found in the Safe Body Art Act before reopening. Staff will be screened daily and deemed to be in good health with no symptoms. So here's the symptoms. I won't click on it, but there's the symptoms example that I think Sandra put that up there a while ago. Staff registry, date and time of work and shifts will be kept to facilitate any contact tracing. Body artists using PPE, currently use PPE such as non-medical masks, aprons, and sleeves, but they need to continue to do that. Gloves are worn for all procedures. So it basically talks about what staff will do. It then says, this is what the client needs to do. New procedures for clients will be posted on the door, in stations, and washrooms. Clients will be screened to ensure that they are in good health with no symptoms, and they've not traveled by air or outside the province for 14 days. As they arrive, they'll be asked again if they're feeling unwell. So, I know people often say, people have said this is very basic stuff. It's very basic stuff, but in this case, repetition is going to be our friend. Okay, so repetition is going to help us to get through these things by ensuring we do these things every time. Okay. Sorry, I see a couple of questions here, so I'm just going to look at the questions. Let's see. Seemed to be a shortage of plexiglass. Any insight on who might have access or supplies? I'll tell you what, Paula, we'll look into that and we'll post it on our PPE page. I'm going to show you that in a minute. But it was my understanding that there were a couple of folks, sign manufacturers. So I know Matatal Signs up the road, and I think United Signs, but I'm unsure. So why don't I check that and we'll post that and we'll include that as we send out a link after this. Okay. Small consulting firm. Let's see. Work from our respective home. All our work's done online. I know you said we didn't need to get a plan approved, but am I still legally required to have one? There is no legal obligation at this time to have a plan at all. So in order to have a legal obligation, they need to change legislation. They need to do all those kinds of things. They're not doing that, okay? But you need to have a plan. Martin, you need to ensure that you're being careful. Even if you're using the plan that we have and add a couple of more specifics, you have a plan. So people should not think of a plan as a huge onerous task. I'll show you the government's plan in a moment, or they're dealing with COVID-19. That's essentially a plan, okay? This is a very specific plan, this meaning the body art plan. It's very specific. It talks about clients will wear their own non-medical masks, appointments only, you can't wait in the hallway, you can't wait there, all of those kinds of things. Sorry, how do I get back to this? Oops. I lost my page. Let's see if I can get back. Yep. Oh, now I've lost it again. Oh, here it is back here. So, you need to have something, but you are not legally required at this time. That may change, but it is my understanding that there is no legal obligation. At any day, Dr. Strang could put as part of his medical order, which is the document that's telling us we all have to physically distance and closing the borders and the emergency medical order and all those kinds of things. He could add this to the emergency medical order. So that would then be, I suppose, at that point, a legal obligation to meet the emergency order. But at this point, there's nothing. Okay. So again, just an example of the specifics that are available for the body art sector. The Athletic Therapists Association, the Atlantic Provinces Athletic Therapists Association. So this looks pretty good. Reopening guidelines. So here's their reopening guidelines. We can click on this and we can see it's 9 pages. It's very specific. It talks about the Atlantic provinces. It talks about reopening in Nova Scotia in particular, be guided by the Nova Scotia Department of Health and Wellness and Nova Scotia Public Health. I'm willing to answer questions, by the way. I know I'm continuing, but I'm willing to answer questions at any time. So if anybody wants to, sort of raise their hand or write one down, happy to answer that. So again, specifics on screening of patients, pre-arrival, upon arrival. I know at the gym I go to, the intention, and this isn't a gym, obviously, but the gym I go to, the intention, if there's a class at 7 a.m., we have to wait in our cars until 3 minutes to 7. We will be called in at 3 minutes to 7. We have to walk to our position in the gym, and we have to stay within that 10-foot square block the entire period that we're in the gym. At the end of the gym activity, we have to walk out a separate door. So that's how they're limiting spread at that gym, and that's what their plan says, okay? So let's see. So again, it's just an example of, this is a very detailed plan. So if you are an organization that needs to have a detailed plan, I would encourage you to take a look at these plans that are available and let us know if you have any comments or questions. The Restaurant Association of Nova Scotia, a much more detailed document. Please download the, let's see, reopening guidelines here. Okay, there we go, a link. So here we have a document that's 19 pages long, okay? So it's much more detailed, much more specific. I mean, restaurants were already very clean locations. You were unlikely to have issues with food and that sort of thing. But here's really specific items about food safety. Correctly label chemicals and pesticides, keep all food items off the floor, ensure the person in charge has their approved food handler certificate, check the chemicals, cleaning and sanitization, disinfecting procedures. It actually has drawings of what you should do at the back of house, so in the kitchen, what you need to do in the front of house, so in the area where people would normally sit, what you need to do in the restrooms. So this is, again, a great plan. Would really encourage people to look at that. So I'm going to skip over these plans now and get back to our resource page. So I just want to touch on this just so people know what's available. This is a list of the government programs. To be honest, we probably haven't updated that in a couple of weeks, but it does have information available. You can click on it and you can download it and those sorts of things. So good information there. Both of the documents that I mentioned are available on this page under the 5 ways to prepare to reopen. Federal resources, I'm not going to go through these in gory detail, but I would really encourage you, sorry, let's go back up to the top here. Small business hotline, this is a good one. I will click on this. There is a hotline available. If you're a small business, you have questions, you can call this number, 1-866-989-10080, and there will be 125, I think it's actually 150 members, CPAs or CAs available to speak to you from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. And again, I'd encourage people to look at that. If you have questions or concerns about some of the programs, want more detailed answers, we're happy to answer those questions at the Chamber, but we're also encouraging people to utilize that resource as well. Back to the federal resources, just everything that you want that's available. Again, the wage subsidy, even if you're not eligible for the emergency wage subsidy of 75%, if you had zero decline in revenue, you're still eligible for that 10% wage subsidy for employers, right? Again, you'll want to look at the rules to make sure that you actually qualify, but again, would encourage you to take a look at that. What else is really important out here? Students. If you do have the opportunity to hire students, I would encourage you to do that. There are programs available from the federal government and available from the provincial government. Normally, you can't stack those programs, so you have to choose one. Now you can stack those programs, and you can actually get 100% of the salaries to pay those students from the provincial and federal government. So take a look at that. Provincial resources. So large number of links. The Regional Relief and Recovery Fund is the one I mentioned. Actually, I guess this would be bigger. This would be more ACOA. So ACOA is a bigger opportunity and is for more than $40,000. So, I don't want to target anybody. I don't really know who's on the phone or who's on the webinar, but if you're a hotel and you expect very, very few guests, this may be something that you want to apply for, because the average application under this has been almost $200,000. So you should take a look at that. Okay, so this is for bigger organizations who are looking for more money. Personal protective equipment. So again, we've got a much longer list here of organizations that have materials. I'm just looking to quickly see if there's anything there. There we go. Atlantic Digital Reproductions Inc. Signage and plexiglass dividers. So a lot of curiosity. Okay, so anyway, send us a message or just call them and ask them about the plexiglass. But I know there are others that are providing that excuse me, that material as well. How to support local. This is going to be so important as we head back out of this. I mean, I think we all love Walmart and Costco, and there's a time for Walmart and Costco, but there's also a time for us to support small local businesses and even local businesses. And I should include chains in that, Moxie's or Subway or Pita Pit. If I could think of three that are franchise operations, those owners live and work and employ people in our communities. A very, very small amount of money from those locations is going back to the national organization. So, we should think about local, but we should also think local, meaning they only have a location here. But we also need to think about some of those franchise organizations who are employing Nova Scotians, and often the majority of that money is staying here. Let's see. That's great. Okay, thank you, Yvette, for your comments. Chamber Affinity Partners, just some of the offers that we have, but also if you go to the Chamber website, you'll find a long list of Chamber Affinity Partners and the resources available. Chamber webinar series, you're on a webinar, so you likely know how to find that. Some flow charts on specifically how some of these programs work, like the wage subsidy. So very specific and very detailed. So you could take a look at that. The Canadian Chamber of Commerce, the Canadian Business Resilience Network. I did mention that $10,000 opportunity. So you could get a $10,000 grant if you apply. I'm just looking quickly to see if I can find it, but it's here somewhere. So let's see. Business Resilience Network. I think I started out on the homepage, but here we go. Small Business Relief Fund, right? The first thing. So $620,000 in funds. 62 small Canadian businesses can apply. The application is right here. Encourage you to take a look at that. Okay. Just to click back to the Chamber of Commerce here, if I can. Maybe it won't let me. I have to just go back to the Chamber of Commerce. Here we go. So that's how we get to the page I was just on. So I encourage you to take a look at that, and then business to business support, and then in the community, some of the groups that are available and doing additional webinars. So sorry, I've talked for 55 minutes. I hope you found that useful and informative. questions, although I know some folks have been asking questions along the way. Um, you know, this is a difficult time for all of us, for businesses. We're now in the, I prefer to think of it as reawakening phase, because many businesses were not closed. There's a lot of confusion about that in Nova Scotia. Our estimate was that only 30% of businesses were actually, less than 30% of businesses were actually ordered closed. The majority of businesses were not ordered closed, but we did all move to our homes if we could. Many people, I'm in Burnside, many people, many businesses were not able to move to their homes, but so they maintained their offices and maintained their work facilities or their factory floor or whatever it was. Thank you all very much. I'm gonna, if there are no more questions, I'm gonna jump off, but take a look at the Chamber website. Keep an eye and do read the emails that we send you. And I'm saying that because we do put, you know, sometimes we don't duplicate the information. So it may be information on Tuesday. If we send out information, it may be different information the following week. We're trying not to duplicate it, although I do think we need to repeat some of that information at times. I hope your businesses will all do well as we return to our workplaces. And I look forward to seeing you at either our next virtual event or our next event. Thank you, everybody. Thanks very much.